good hello to our listeners and viewers of this video, which is really a time to dig a little bit deeper into this edition's laureates of the Ethics and Trust in Finance for a Sustainable Future Global Prize. I'm Josina Kamerling. I'm head of regulatory outreach for CFA Institute, and at the same time, global co-president of the jury together with Paul Dembinski. It has been my pleasure for quite a few editions now to read the different essays. And this year I was really struck by the quality. And we can tell because there are two ex aequo prizes, the third and the second prize. And it does show really the quality of the essays. Andrea Longton, you're from the USA. And your title, the title of your paper was Asymmetrical Access to Capital, Why Ethics Matters. And this is really very important in this day and age. COVID has impacted enormously. Markets are changing. Markets are global, but also local. And there are challenges with different sections of society. In my work with the Vatican, this is a key concern of Pope Francis, for example. But he's not the only one. Different nation leaders have put this to the foreground, and also multinational organizations. For you, what motivated you to write this essay and focus on the asymmetrical access to capital?
Thank you, and thank you very much. I'm really honored to be here and honored to be part of this esteemed group. I really appreciate it. I am driven by the North Star that finance should be for everyone. And in the United States, it's often not. Black, Latino, Indigenous, people of color are often boxed out, and chronically so, from basic financial services that any person or community needs to reach its full potential. And so I am thrilled to have had the opportunity to outline this in a paper with the premise is that an ethical financial system is one in which no one is left out, and to illuminate some history of how the US financial system evolved to this place, and to demonstrate how community lenders like community development financial institutions, or CDFIs, have a long and successful track record of driving fair capital to those very communities who have been dismissed for too long. And finally, things that financial institutions can think about and conversation starters for how do we address that gap? How do we address that asymmetry so that we do have a financial system in which no one is left out?
Maybe in your own personal life or career, you have encountered some examples. Would you be able to highlight from your personal life or career where you've really seen this happening?
Sure. I am fortunate to work for CDFIs in a national network of CDFIs, and so I get to see everyday borrower stories of people who have asked for a loan and applied for loans for mainstream financial institutions and have been told no time and time again, and then go to a CDFI, apply for a loan. The CDFI says, of course, you're very creditworthy. We can't wait to see what you do with this. And people are very successful. There is a restaurant in Washington, D.C., and I'm in Washington, D.C. currently, and the restaurant's called Po Bay Jim's. It is a sandwich shop. It's an incredibly successful sandwich shop that was financed by the Washington Area Community Investment Fund, or WACIF. The owner was told by mainstream financial institutions, we don't think so, we don't think this is the right fit. If you want to open a Subway, which is a franchise sandwich shop in the US, we'll be happy to finance that. But I'm not sure about this local small business, if that's the case. And the CDFI or WACIF said, this is absolutely possible, let's do this. And it was a success, even through COVID, when we had severe cash flow disruptions in the US, where WACIF, that community lender, stood for its borrowers and said, no, we're going to find out and figure out how we're going to put you in a position to thrive, how to get you the financing you need, the capital you need to make it through this and to keep your staff employed, and find that way to do that. And they were a tremendous partner. That restaurant is still open in business, and if you ever have a chance to get the sandwiches, they're very tasty. I can personally attest.
I would love to taste their sandwiches. I'm sure when travel is permitted and I'm back in Washington, I will certainly try them out. That would be lovely. Now, my next point is you have already referred a little bit to some of the issues in the US, but could we dig a little bit deeper into the main causes of asymmetrical access to capital in the US? Is the US a sort of sandbox for other areas of the world, or is it a very peculiar environment?
That's a great question, and it's a big question with deep roots. I think every financial system evolved to support its underlying economy. Our economies are growing more global, and so we're seeing them overlap. But I think COVID has also taught us that economies are also very local and are supported, especially in those crises times, by its local financial system of how we're able to support, because it's all driven by capital. Who's getting capital, how much capital, at what rates, at what terms. And so the US financial system is no different in that it evolved around its underlying economy that dates back before the US declared its independence from Great Britain in 1776. And our US financial economy was born in a time when slave-based economies were what was driving economic wealth. And the US was born in the middle of that time. And so our financial system was built around, its origins were built around how do we support a slave-based economy. For instance, the US pioneered asset-backed securities that were collateralized by enslaved people. It was legal, it supported the US economy, it was not ethical. And we continue to see that traced through, and my paper does a bit of that, of tracing through how our financial system support its economy, and how has that been either explicitly or implicitly how did it carry prejudices and biases in society and culture into a financial system. So we carry that through the 1960s and even before. How did the US economy react to the Great Depression? And we saw redlining, which is when the government said, here are areas that are lined in green. They took a map and just ringed it around a map of areas in green these are great places to invest. You want to lend here. Those are usually white communities. Here are areas in yellow. We're not sure. Proceed with caution. And then there were areas lined in red. And those we consider these haphazard. These are not creditworthy. Do not lend your money here. And those were Black communities. And so we continue to see how financing flows up until today. The last example is from 2021. And we see that all of those pieces still contribute to the racial wealth gap in the US, where white families have 10 times the wealth of the average Black family. We started tracking that in the 1960s. The numbers haven't changed until today. So whatever we're doing, it's not enough for financial inclusion. We're not moving the needle even a little bit. And so the paper tracks through that. Of what are those causes in the US and how can we fix that? What is the solution?
Andrea, that's really quite frightening that from the 60s still things haven't changed.
Yeah.
And I love how you dig into history and go to the origins of the founding of the US and draw that line, because yes, we are not broken up into, this is what's happening now. It's a sum total of everything that's come before us, and that we need to remember when we want to effect change and revolution. So change or revolution, it has to come. What would be your to-do list for regulators and politicians and any other stakeholders who can affect change to really try and help financial inclusion? What are the key takeaways here?
We're really fortunate in the US. We have some champions of financial inclusion at the federal government, from Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen to US Senator Mark Warner, US Representative Maxine Waters, and Vice President Kamala Harris, who are all champions for financial inclusion. And what I've seen that group do is to listen, to step outside of the mainstream echo chambers. What is good credit, what is not? And to step back and say, we have different financial realities. I want to step away from this echo chamber and listen to groups of people who are working in this other financial reality where access to capital is scarce. How can we listen from that side and see the type of finance that needs to come in and who are the key players. So I'm really fortunate to work with a group of CDFIs of what are they doing to have such long and successful track records of driving fair capital to these communities that have been boxed out for so long, and being able to show up and say, we're doing really well. We have low default rates. We're there to support our borrowers. And the paper outlines 5 secret sauce moments for CDFIs of how they do that. And it's tried and true banking practices applied to that target community. They know their customer and they lend to that customer. They underwrite to the support of that customer. And so I would say to politicians, regulators, and financial institutions, take a step back and listen and see what's already being done and how do we support that and how do we catalyze more investment into those communities. We've seen a real moment in the United States of corporations, of public government, and other private institutions saying, how can we work together to support financial inclusion? And it's driving capital. How do we open up those rivers of capital to flow to areas that haven't been before? And let's find the right partners who know how to do it and give them capital.
Yeah, we need to put finance to the good of society. We cannot think that the world is infinite and that we can keep on doing harm. We see it with climate change, we see it with social inequality and diversity, with multiple other issues, and it is a good time. I think COVID is probably also teaching us to listen. You mentioned saying this, listen and take a look at what's happened and what you can learn from experience around you. And I think that's very important, to take the time to listen. I certainly will. Andrea, I've really enjoyed your essay. Keep doing it and be part of that group of laureates of this really wonderful prize, and keep pulling at that bell. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I really appreciate this.